Good evening. From the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., this is the Kelly Wright Show. And it is indeed a pleasure and an honor to be part of the Black News Channel, providing a culturally specific voice to African Americans, to the African diaspora, and to all people around the world. Welcome, one and all. Your headlines in just a moment, but first, some opening observations, if you will. Here on the Kelly Wright Show, we will always seek to inform and inspire you. Therefore, let me take a moment to salute the powerful, enduring, and strong loving spirit of Black women. Malcolm X was quoted as saying, "The most disrespected person in America is the Black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the Black woman. The most neglected person in America is the Black woman." An example of that comes right out of the pages of history. During the early stages of the suffrage movement in America, Black women were caught between two worlds, coming out of slavery and then having to fight for equality and the right for all women to vote. Now, without the significant contributions of bold and courageous Black women, there would be no women's suffrage. And now, people who believe in a more Eurocentric history may not know the complete picture. When I was growing up, the history books only acknowledged white women like Susan B. Anthony. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a fact. But let's tell the whole illuminated truth. Let's include the fact that Black women were the relentless trailblazers who helped pave the way for all women to have their right to vote. Women like Harriet Tubman, the escaped slave who became the conductor on the Underground Railroad and a spy for Union soldiers during the Civil War. But there's more, because Harriet Tubman, along with abolitionist Sojourner Truth and Ida B. Wells, an investigative journalist, educator, and co-founder of the NAACP, greatly contributed to the women's suffrage movement. Harriet once said, as a matter of fact, "Every great dream begins with a dreamer. Always remember, you have within you the strength, the patience, and the passion to reach for the stars to change the world." Against all odds, Black women continue to emerge as phenomenal women, achieving great accomplishments in all aspects and every discipline in life. They're first ladies, doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs, business owners, politicians, preachers. They are mothers, daughters, wives, and sisters. Their list of greatness knows no bounds. So let me be perfectly clear. Black girls rock. And now, here are your headlines today. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention confirmed the country's 15th case of the coronavirus. The patient had been under federal quarantine at Joint Base San Antonio in Lackland, Texas since February 7th and is now receiving treatment at a nearby unnamed hospital. According to the CDC, it is the third person to be diagnosed with the virus while in a federal quarantine after returning from China on a U.S. State Department flight. The coronavirus that was first identified in December in Wuhan, China, and has since sickened more than 46,000 people worldwide. Attorney General Bill Barr is engulfed in a political firestorm amid fallout from the Justice Department's decision to reduce its recommended sentence for Roger Stone. Democrats are demanding Barr's resignation for his involvement in revising Stone's sentencing recommendation reduction. Metro Police held a weekly contest to encourage arrest and other enforcement actions last summer in a predominantly African-American community. Top commanders learned of the unsanctioned competition, shutting it down less than 24 hours ago. The weekly competition was created by a supervisor in the District 1 police station and involved officers based at Fort Totten in Northeast Washington. And that's a look at your headlines. When we return, we'll be talking with Gwen McKinney about women's suffrage. That's next. At the top of the hour, I opened with comments about the strength and resilience of Black women. In particular, their bold and courageous work in fighting for women's suffrage. Joining me now is Gwen McKinney. She launched the first African-American and woman-owned communications firm, McKinney & Associates, based here in the nation's capital. She is the campaign director of Suffrage, Race, Power, a public engagement initiative dedicated to shifting the narrative on equity and gender justice. Gwen, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh, I'm thrilled to have you because you really unpacked this for us. What does it really mean, the power of the narrative that you're actually illuminating for all of us to learn more about black women and their role in women's suffrage?
Well, narrative gives us our inspiration and understanding, not only of a world view, but how we impact on it today and tomorrow. And so the lens of history, or shall I say her story, is part of what we're wanting to do.
So in doing that, what would you bring to light for us here on the Kelly Wright Show in terms of our 400-year history and the contributions and achievements we've made from the perspective of her story?
Well, first of all, you know, this year is the centennial, the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment, which granted women the right to vote. Not all women, not black women, because the majority of black women who lived in the South continue to struggle for more than almost 50 years. The passage of the Voting Rights Act was when, in fact, all black people under law were granted voting rights. And we're still struggling for it, as you know.
Why is that?
Well, I think some of it is that the American cardinal sin of slavery has never fully been redressed or addressed in this nation. So you talked about 400 years ago. So I would say the pioneers and patriots, the black women who waged their battles for suffrage, began 400 years ago when those women were stolen from their ancestral homes and enslaved here in this country.
During the women's suffrage movement, there were white and blacks working together, and at some point, the white women's suffrage movement separated itself from blacks.
Yes. Historically, they split because they made a conscious decision that their whiteness and white supremacy was a more powerful tool for them than suffrage, universal suffrage, which would basically combine the power of all women, not just white women.
And would it not have been better if they had all stood together?
Absolutely. Even today we see that.
And that's a point that we can end this one. We have to have you come back because this is very illuminating. If we can stand together and come across our racial boundaries, as Dr. King once said, you know, let's have a seat at the table of brotherhood. And also, as Maya Angelou often said, be a phenomenal woman. And black girls not only rock, but they're phenomenal women that all women can learn from. And it would be great to move the ball forward instead of staying where we are separated.
Absolutely. I look forward to sharing more. Our project is launching in March, which is Women's Equality Month and Women's History Month. And so I am thrilled and excited to join you at this table again to share more.
Bring all the ladies back. Let's all have a conversation, because at the end of the day, I'm the product of a single parent mother. So just from now on, refer to me as June's boy.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Gwen
you.
McKinney, thank you so much.
A pleasure.
Love having her as a guest. We got so much more coming up on the Kelly Wright Show. Stay around. And we're going to talk about politics now. In the studio with me, Malik Abdul, a GOP strategist. Also joining us today is Stephen Held, Democratic political commentator and public policy expert. Let's get right into the issues. So we're watching a lot unfold with the Democrats, and they're preparing to go to South Carolina, preparing to get ready for some additional primaries. So far, we see that Bernie Sanders is gaining a lot of traction and momentum. But are the politics of the day indicating that the Democrats are in disarray following the impeachment and everything else that's been going on?
I don't think that the party itself is in disarray. Part of the challenge is that, you know, we have a number of people running for office, and I think if I could have any type of real criticism is that what we're seeing right now is the anti-Bernie contingent of the party. And we'll see what happens with, I think, Nevada and South Carolina. But more so than Bernie Sanders, I actually would probably look at Joe Biden to see what's happening with Joe Biden, because I'm not sure if Joe Biden can lose several, you know, primaries and caucuses and then go to South Carolina. You know, he's kind of, everyone's waiting around for, well, let's see what black people do in South Carolina. But I don't know if that's something that Joe Biden can really, you know, afford at this point. But I do think that there are some things in the party, and there are a lot of people, for instance, you have the Bernie side, you have those who are supported of Biden, but then also with the introduction of Mike Bloomberg, you know, I think that the party is trying to find itself. You know, I'm not entirely critical, because I remember what happened in 2016 when the Republicans, I think we had probably about 16 or 17 candidates on the stage. And so there was a lot of infighting and people saying that, well, you know, it's the end of the Republican Party because they can't get themselves together. I think eventually when the party actually chooses a nominee, you know, we'll see what happens. The Democrats are definitely having some problems right about now, but I don't know if they're really, I wouldn't say that they're in disarray, that the party itself is in disarray.
See, that's coming from a Republican talking about the Democrats. So what do you say?
I mean, I think overall it's fair. Yeah, I mean, we're watching the sausage being made, right? So to speak.
We are.
So it's going to be a messy process, and we always hear about, you know, is it going to devolve into attacks, and what do attacks in primaries among candidates end up looking like for optics when the actual general election comes? And I think we probably make a lot more out of it than is necessary. This is just how the process goes. Yeah. And so it will be interesting with Joe Biden. He's really banking on his boost from more diverse states, but let's say he goes,
Black and brown in particular is what he stated.
Yeah, exactly. And so let's say he goes into South Carolina and sweeps and gets 100% of non-white vote support. If he continues to get zero support from white voters like he did in Iowa and New Hampshire, is that going to be enough for him? Is it going to be revive it?
Good point. Steve and Malik, here's something else now. To your point, and you brought up Mike Bloomberg. He has already gone to places like Alabama and to the South to start wooing some of the black voters, and he's getting beyond the stop and frisk situation. And there are some reports that blacks are coalescing behind him. We're here in Washington, D.C., where the mayor has come out to endorse him. So what do you think? Does Mike Bloomberg have the ability to get in there? Are we going to see this election turn out to be a fight between billionaires?
That's a hard answer to give. It's really the wild card. It's the wild card, you know, because you can have voter resentment from the way he's flooding the airwaves. You know, I mean, we've seen media coverage about 13-year-olds writing out to his campaign to say, hey, I just want to watch my cartoons on YouTube. Why am I watching all your Mike Bloomberg ads? And so it could end up being a double-edged sword for him, and I think that's going to be a hard thing to predict.
Okay. So President Trump, you're a member of the GOP, you're a GOP strategist. What is he doing to court the black and brown vote? Is he doing the right thing, or does he need to stop tweeting?
So the problem that, you know, as far as policies, you know, we can go down a list of things that the president...
Okay, let's go down that list of policies.
We can go down.
Be fair.
We can go down the list of things, and I have these conversations with people all the time. So whether we're talking about things like the, you know, they cover big issues. So when we talk about things that the administration is doing on behalf of the black community, you know, people throw out like, well, HBCU funding, which is good. Like that's really good. That's really good stuff.
We just talked about that yesterday.
But if people dig into those numbers, so it's not just the general funding for HBCUs. You know, a lot of people don't understand how our government works. So how our government works, you know, there are, for instance, Spelman, North Carolina A&T, a lot of these universities, aside from the permanent funding mechanism that Donald Trump signed with this last bill, with the Lamar Alexander bill, you know, there are colleges and universities who are receiving funding for their STEM programs. So for instance, Spelman University, I think they're now going to create a STEM center or something based on a $2 million grant, I think from the Department of Energy. Those type of things are helpful. What we're doing now, and you know, that it's kind of projecting, but what the administration is doing around opportunity zones, you know, that, you know, there are criticisms, and some, you know, people may say that those criticisms are unfair. Some people may think that they're not. But what I do like about what Donald Trump is doing, but he's very in your face about it. You know, he's not trying, and he's in a position to be that in ways that Barack Obama could not be. You know, so when he's at a State of the Union, he said, hey, I'm gonna black the State of the Union out. You know, I'm gonna have everything about what I'm doing in the black community. I'm gonna go to the Super Bowl. I'm gonna have this big ad in the Super Bowl, and I'm gonna feature Alice Johnson.
This is Kiki Airman.
Yeah, if you want to come to the White House and have a conversation with me about, you know, totally open to it, but he can do it though.
He can do it. Yeah. Steve, what do you think from a Democratic perspective? Is the president getting his message across so that he's appealing to more black Americans? Or are black Americans so upset with him that they're saying, wait a minute, wait, but what's your point?
From what I can tell, it seems like they're still upset with him, despite these victories or these policy victories that he can claim. And I think, I mean, you're right about the opportunity zones is a contentious debate. It's a complex policy, and I think there is a lot of honest debate that's valid as to who, you know, the opportunities will come, but who will be who will be so, you know, planting
who's
seeds,
really benefiting from them.
You know, so the jobs may come, but where will the ownership go to, and things like that. And those, I think, we'll just have to see over time what that bears out.
So at the end of the day, as we get closer to whoever becomes the front runner and the nominee on the Democratic Party, they will have to go against President Donald Trump, who will still have a lot of support from his base, maybe not necessarily a lot of favor from the majority of the public. So we're going to see a very interesting, pivotal election here, and there are many members on Capitol Hill, including the members of the Congressional Black Caucus, who are saying no more 4 years of President Trump.
Absolutely, and I get that. You know, the problem is, I don't think that there is so much a policy problem as far as what the administration is doing with the black community. There's a serious messaging problem that extends well beyond Donald Trump. You know, the Republican Party has had a messaging problem for years, and that's something that they have to get a hold on.
We're going to end it there. Steve Held, Malik, thanks for joining us. And I just want to end on that. What you said about the messaging problem within the Republican Party, I'm reminded of President George W. Bush, who told Republicans, you need to be more inclusive. You need to be more diverse, reaching out to blacks and browns.
In your rhetoric, and not just in your policy, but also in your rhetoric. You can't say things that we think are offensive. And you have to be aware of that. So until the party actually gets a hold of that, we can have the best policies in the world. But if you have a messaging problem, you're not going to convince a lot of people to eventually, you know, consider your policies or the party at whole.
Well, President Trump, you're invited here anytime to talk to the Kelly Wright Show, to get your messaging across the way you'd like to. And we'll be fair, and we'll actually give you enough opportunity to talk to us. Malik Abdul, I know you can work on that. And Steve Held, thank you very much. We'll be back with a lot more after this. Joining me now is my good friend and always a special guest here on the Kelly Wright Show is Dr. Ben Chavis, and thanks for being with us. You know, we were talking about the presidential race. We talked about women being involved in the race, and will we ever see a female president, and perhaps getting more women of color involved. But then we're also talking about what's happening out there in the campaign trail. Where do you see things going for the Democrats right now?
Well, you know, I represent the black press with the National Newspaper Publishers Association, and I'm hearing from my publishers and editors across the country. The black vote is going to be the determinative vote. And the fact that there's no black on the ticket is unlikely. It looks like that a woman will probably be on the ticket.
Right.
So what it is, it will galvanize and turn out the black vote. I think that this is an open question. And I think that whoever is running for president, no matter what party, has to speak to the quality of life issues, have to improve the economic development of our community, have to improve the health care of our community, has to open up more access to our young people, get the highest, best quality education. These are the issues that Black America wants to hear. And a lot of times the presidential candidates are debating with one another, but they're missing the mark when it comes to dealing with the quality of life. What will uplift or enable us to uplift ourselves? That's the issue in 2020.
You remind me, and we were just talking about Democrats, and we'll get to the Republican, which would be President Trump. But let's talk about that for a moment before that, and that's Mike Bloomberg.
Yes.
Because Mike Bloomberg, you and I were at an event following his announcement, and here in D.C., where he talked about providing housing. He also talked about institutional racism. So he is actually going out and courting the black vote.
Well, not only courting the black vote, just this week he made the largest single ad buy in the black press in the history of the NMPA, $3.5 million ad buy. He just bought it in all the black newspapers. Wow. So I have to give Mike Bloomberg credit for putting his money where his mouth is. I mean, he's really going out, and I think it's going to challenge the other candidates.
Certainly
I think it's going to challenge Senator Sanders. I think it's going to challenge Vice President Biden, Senator Warren, all of the candidates.
All of them as they go forward.
That's right. You know, the black vote, again, is going to be the single most important voting block in 2020. And that's why the black news, and I think your show, Kelly, in particular, is going to be a focus so we can kind of not just debate the issues, but affirm what are the top 3, 5, 6 issues that are going to bring black people out to vote.
Let's go through the list then. What are the top 3 issues right now for black Americans?
Well, the number one is health care. We still need to get better access to health care for our young people, for our families, for our elders, health care. Secondly, education. The education of our children, the education of our young people, more access to not only training, but making sure that the education gives them the jobs. Economic development. We need more African-American owned businesses. I'm so proud of the Black News Channel because it's opening the door for entrepreneurship.
Absolutely.
Also youth development, leadership development of young people.
We must not lose sight of the development of our young people,
That's right.
millennials and those coming after them. Now let's go to the Trump administration. What is President Trump doing? What must he do if he's actually going to court the black vote and be viewed as being sincere for getting the vote?
Well, it's my understanding now that some of the Republicans are reaching out to the African American community. And I think it remains to be seen how effective that will be. But I think it's in the interest of both the Democrats, the Republicans, and the independents not to take the black vote for granted. You know, we need to hear from these candidates. We need to hear on the issues. We need to hear commitments. Because a lot of times, as you know, Kelly, people will make promises for the black vote, get the black vote, and then act like we don't exist after the election.
We're not going to let that party, but we do not dance.
That's right. That's right. We become mannequins. We become props in somebody else's play. We got to change that in 2020.
Okay. Well, all those candidates, including the President of the United States, are always invited here on the Kelly Wright Show to have an open, honest dialogue about what has to be done to improve all Americans, the lives for all Americans. Dr. Ben Chavis, as always, thank you.
Always, my man. God bless.
Okay, God bless. Coming back with more right after this. My next guest is brilliant, beautiful, and black. Paris DeRose is a domestic violence activist, author, and film director. She has devoted her life to assisting victims of domestic violence and developing programs and initiatives to help those who have suffered from abuse. Paris, welcome.
Thank you.
You know, I defined you that way and described you that way because you are, and we need to remind black women that they're beautiful, brilliant, and black. having said that, there is a serious menace to our society, and it is domestic violence.
Yes.
And you've been writing about it and basically chronicling some of the things that go on with our women.
Absolutely.
What can we do?
We have to be a voice. We have to speak up, because it's a lot of people that decided to sweep it under the carpet and be silent. But you just have to be a voice. You have to be a voice.
In situations that you talk about in your book, for example, one of your books, Blue Black: Tears of a Father and Child.
Yes.
What do you write about in that particular book?
That is about me growing up. My mom, my brother, and sister, we grew up in a home of domestic violence and child abuse at the hands of my father. And I decided to write the story in a trilogy, and because of my mom.
And you did it because of your mom,
Yes.
to reinforce your mom and let her know that she's...
That she is wonderful, that she's awesome, because she stood up and decided that I'm not going to take it anymore, and she left.
Isn't that part of the solution, that women have to be strong enough to say, I'm not going to take it anymore?
Absolutely. And it may have took her a little while, but she finally said, this is it. I can't do this anymore. You're not going to do it anymore to me, and you're not going to do it anymore to my children.
Now, there are some who stay.
Yes.
And there are some watching this program who are trapped in domestic violence right now.
Yes.
Based on your experiences and what you do
Yes.
to help women in those situations, how would you advise them to gain enough of a purpose and enough of faith to step out and be strong and leave that situation?
I would say, especially if they have children, look at what it's doing to your kids. It's not helping them. It's actually making it worse. And I'm sure that they do love their children, that they would get out of that situation. It may not be easy, because everyone will have someone that they can speak with. There are hotlines out there to help them. To make that phone call, ask for some help. Don't let your kids go through this. And you should never be going through this.
As a child who saw this,
Yes.
you're quite victorious.
Thank you.
How do you define or describe for me, if you will, what gave you this kind of confidence after going through the pain and then turning that into power?
Well, at 5 years old, I remember not knowing if my mom was still alive. And I always prayed and prayed and prayed, please, please, please let my mom be alive. And as I got older, we were still going through it as a teenager. I said that I am going to write about this. I'm going to be the one. I'm going to be a voice for all these women out here that are afraid, that are scared to do it. And I always just prayed for everyone else, and God gave me the strength for me.
That's a good place to start.
Yes.
Now, what your advice to men who
Yes.
Who find themselves on the cusp of getting involved in an abusive situation where they're carrying out these egregious acts of violence against women that they quote unquote love.
Yeah.
How do you advise them? Because there is a chance of coming back. It's an illness?
Yes,
Okay.
it is. Most people are going through an illness, some type of sickness, and they need help. They need help just like my dad. And that's why I was able to forgive him, because I know he was ill. No one, I don't think anybody in their right mind really want to abuse someone or hurt someone that they really love.
Did it happen in his past?
Actually, it did not.
It did not.
It
Wow.
did not.
Because
It
that
did
breaks
not.
the stereotype that men who abuse have been abused at some place in their life. So
Yeah.
that never happened to him.
No, he was just lost sometimes, and I don't just want to say African American men, but when they don't have a job, they don't know where money's coming in, they're frustrated, they're angry at the world, and it just so happened that he took it out on his family.
And we're not giving excuses
No
for it,
excuse at all.
but
There's
it
no-
is a fact that if a man cannot feed his family,
Exactly.
he gets to a place in his life where he's frustrated.
It's pushed
if
up
he-
against the wall, like,
and
what
he's
do I
pushed
do?
up, exactly, pushed up against the wall. And if you have no place to take that, as you did,
Yes.
you took it to God.
Yes.
And today in society, we don't always say, hey, brother, chill.
Yes.
you know, pump the brakes on being violent to your family and give some faith and some hope to God. It's okay to talk about that.
Yes, counseling.
And it's okay to get therapy as well.
Absolutely, because I did the same thing. I had to also get therapy, but you know, my main source, because that's how my mom raised me, was to talk it out with God. And God helped me a lot. He helped me to pray for everyone else, but one thing that I missed, I didn't pray for me, because I always felt like God gave,
Wow, repeat that again.
I never prayed for me. I never prayed for myself, because I always knew God had me, but you still have to pray for yourself, but I always prayed for everyone else.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. I am moved by your wow, I am really moved by that. Her book is Blue Black, Tears of a Father and a Child, and also Tears of a Father and Child, Shades of Blue. And look at this beautiful picture of Paris here. Freed. Define for me freed, because you're showing me freedom right now.
Yes. Freed is when I felt like this is it. It's over. I've told the story. I decided to, of course, cut off all my hair. And
it's okay.
at that
freedom.
time. Yes. And I just felt like the story was over. I said it, and I'm sure that I've touched a lot of lives. And if I just saved one life, I've done my job.
Well, I think what you've said here today is saving a lot of lives. You're also a writer, entrepreneur. You hold a BS degree in Human Resources Management and advanced training in Business Administration. Come on, lady. And currently pursuing your master's degree to become mental health counselor. I am so pleased to have you on our program today.
Thank you very much
Please
for having
come back
me.
so we can advise other women and men how to get beyond this dastardly deed that we inflict upon each other called domestic violence. There is healing.
Absolutely.
For men and women and
it's
children.
important. That's the only way that you're going to get past it. Because if you're not able to, you got to heal. Because you're not going to be able to forgive if you're not healing.
All right. Her name is Paris. And I got mad love for her. You got to get this book, everybody, and make sure you check her out. Paris DeRose. Thanks so much. God bless you.
Thank you.
Okay. I am delighted to introduce you to my next guest as well. He's Warren Shad. He's the CEO of Shad Pianos and Technologies. He is the only African-American piano manufacturer in the world. Warren is a third-generation musician, second-generation piano technician, and the inventor of groundbreaking assistive technology that educates and enriches the lives of the autistic, deaf, and blind. Welcome to the Kelly Wright Show.
Thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here. This is a wonderful opportunity.
Man, you're doing some great work. I want to start with your specialized interests on those who are often overlooked in society, and yet you've provided technology assistance to them. Tell me about it.
Yes, in terms of assistive technology you're speaking of. Dr. Pearl, who's the chief of neurology at Harvard, and I wrote a dissertation and did a test for about a year with autistic, deaf, and blind, and those who have neurodevelopmental disabilities and neurobehavior disorders. And we did this test to see what matches them in terms of the musical instrument to enrich their lives. So let's say with deaf kids, so we made this bench that has audio in it. So it has speakers and vibration in it, so it assists them to be able to feel the vibrations in the piano, so they'll know where they are playing in the piano. And for the blind, the same thing applies. And for the autistic kid, we know that having a piano teacher right next to them is usually a non-starter. So we have video cams and monitors built in on the piano, so they can see their piano teacher long distance. So it's a more comfortable environment for them to be able to see a teacher on screen opposed to right next to them.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah, we were
and they probably love it.
Oh, they loved it. We were published in the Music and Medicine Journal, the esteemed Music and Medicine Journal in 2013.
See, and I love music because music is always healing, it's always therapeutic, it's always inspirational. And there's something else that you've been doing, speaking about inspiration. Your pianos are actually at the Vatican. Please tell me
Correct.
about that, please.
Well, we understood that they were looking for a piano, and we sent them some sound cards and things like that, and sent them our information, and not thinking that we were going to ever get the Vatican, because they've had these venerable piano manufacturers after them for generations. And so we were astounded to be able to get just an email back from them that said we may be interested, and that was enough for me. I was done. If we don't get it, we're good. Just to get that back, especially to see their emblem, on a letterhead.
The Vatican seal. Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing, right? So when we got that back, and they said we're interested, and we'd like to have your pianos here at the Vatican, and we with deference, we want your pianos and understand your great history. And I'm like, what?
Wow.
That was March 2015, and we delivered the piano at Christmas time.
Fantastic.
And right outside of the Sistine Chapel. And they use the piano every day, and then we have another one in St. Peter's Basilica. And in this April, we're delivering one that's going into the Pope's personal residence, and that's really over the top for us.
Now, when you were there, did you meet the Pope?
Oh, absolutely. If you're going to do all this, this wonderful opportunity, you have to meet the Pope.
Indeed,
and then
indeed.
going into his personal residence this April, that's even better.
I've been to the Vatican, but I've never been into the Pope's personal residence. So next time, I think I may have to go along with you.
Hey, that's pretty good. That's
Okay.
that's great.
And so now, I'm just blown away by the fact that you're the only African American manufacturer of pianos.
Yes. Well,
How did that happen?
I'm not the only one with ideas. I'm just the one who went through the fire.
Say that again. I'm not the only.
I'm not the only one with ideas. I'm the only one that went through the fire. I had to get to the
Well
other
said.
side, to do all of the hard, heavy lifting. There's a lot of heavy lifting from major expenses in patents and trademark and all of your IP, much less doing several iterations before you get to the promised land of this is the particular instrument that we want. And we think this is going to represent us well. And we might have to be 3 times as better. And we believe we are 3 times as better than any piano manufacturer or brand out there in existence right now.
My mother played the piano. If she were here, she would say, you have to get me one of those Shad pianos. And I loved her. She had a brilliant voice, a great style of playing. I don't play piano, I play at it, but I took on her idea of singing. And so one of my dreams is to sing before the Pope at the Vatican. We're going to make that happen.
Okay, let's do that. Let's do that.
But more importantly, I'm just so elated and inspired by your story.
Thank
because
you.
I think your story will inspire young people and even older people, not just black, not just brown, but not just white, but everyone around the world should be inspired by your story.
Yeah, I hope so. We've done a lot in terms of reaching out and bringing in people to learn our craft as well. And we've also given our pianos, donated our pianos to several venues and youth programs. Also, we gave a piano just a couple of months ago to the Hospital for Sick Children. And also look for pianos in the city by Shad, where we're putting all these pianos all over the city in Washington, D.C., for people to come up and randomly play the piano.
You got to come back.
Will do.
And next time you come back, we'll have to do a place where we can actually see you playing the piano.
How about that?
That would be great.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Warren Shad,
Yes, sir.
mad love for you, man. God bless
right.
you. Wow.
Thank you so much.
So not only well said, but as God would say, well done.
Hey, how about that? Yes, yes.
All right.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Love this guy. Remember, you can go out there and achieve your dreams. Just believe it, and you can achieve it. We're going to come back with more after this. My next guest you will love. Her name is Diane Monroe. She is a classical violinist and she has literally toured the world. She's originally from Philadelphia and she's been playing her fiddle, as she says, to make people understand her culture and her black heritage. I had the chance to sit down with her at the National Gallery of Arts here in Washington, D.C. about her music that gives a biographical sketch of her life. How did all this begin for you, playing the violin?
Playing the violin? Well, I was I was 8 years old in 3rd grade, and we had an opportunity in my elementary school to pick out an instrument. You know, after taking a test, you know, we took a ritual music test, you know, and we went down to the principal's office to pick out you know, an instrument, and the only thing that was left for me after standing in line was let's see, a clarinet and a violin. And I could not play the clarinet because I had asthma. I remember my mom saying before I went to school, she said, "Well, I think I'd be happy with anything but the violin." So I came home swinging the violin, and you know, and mom said, "Oh no, you know."
I took copious notes from your narration about your being the only black, the sense of feeling inadequate as you went on, and how in classical music there's this racial divide, if you will, in terms of who gets first chair, who's recognized as being the quality artist, and you were the very best, yet you didn't always get the best treatment.
That's correct. It was rough, you know.
Yeah.
And seriously, and I wasn't the only one who didn't get the best treatment. You could see the divide, you know, in the string section. All the black violinists were in the back of the section. You know, all the black violists were in the back of this section. All the black cellists were in the back of this section. It just was that way, you know.
There was one conductor who did not want to conduct your music because he said, "I don't do your kind of music." Well, aren't the notes the same?
Right. Exactly.
And you make good music, by the way, brilliantly written. Tell me what served as the impetus for you to write so well and share your story with the world.
Well, you know, in winning the Pew Center for Arts and Heritage Award last year, the project grant allowed me this freedom of asking any musician that I wanted to write for. And prior to winning the award, there were many steps I took, and the first step was conferring with one of the staff members. And then he said, "Okay, all right, so let's back up a little bit then. Tell me about yourself, you know, just tell me about what happened in your career. You know, was this like, how did you start? What's that?" And I started to you know, just, you know, say what I'd said to you, basically. And then I went on into detail. And the more detailed I got, the more agitated I became. And then the more exuberant I became. And then the more sad I became. And I started just all these emotions, going through the whole gamut of emotions. And he said, "Yep." He said, "That's what you're going to write about, right?" And I said, "I suppose so."
I suppose so. Yeah. And the rest, as they say, is history. Diane Monroe, and we'll be back with her music right after this. My thanks to all of our guests here on the Kelly Wright Show, and in particular, I leave you with this final word. It was Maya Angelou who made this quote: "You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still like air I'll rise." And that is the sentiment of the African American woman. Beautiful, black, and brilliant. You've been righted and ignited to spread some love, freedom, and peace. We leave you with Diane Monroe. Peace out.